In just 10 minutes, get 10 powerful takeaways from the 2-hour conversation between Tim Miller and Tommy Vietor on the Bulwark. They discuss about Alex Jones's opinion that Trump is dying. Plus, hear about Trump's FBI raid on John Bolton, the rise of Gavin Newsom, and the crisis in Gaza. Stay till the end. You won't want to miss this. Takeaway 1. Alex Jones thinks Trump is dying. The interview begins with Tim Miller and Tommy Vietor laughing about Alex Jones and his latest bizarre claims about Donald Trump's health. Jones has started saying that Trump is sick, weak, and even close to dying. They joke about how Jones often sells fear to his audience, but this time he seems genuinely worried about Trump's appearance, his cankles, and even his weight. Tim says what makes it funny is that Jones once pushed fantasies about government conspiracies, but now he sounds like a panicked family member gossiping about someone's health problems. Tommy adds that comedians like Tim Dillon are picking up the same thread and calling out the absurd reality we are now living in. Dillon has said on his show that everything Jones used to rant about in the late 1990s, like FEMA camps, surveillance, and troops in the streets, is now actually happening in Trump's America. Tim and Tommy agree that this mix of comedy and panic shows how far the country has shifted. For example, Dillon joked that soon every American will be forced to join ICE because automation will erase other jobs, and we will all be trying to deport one last immigrant family before deporting each other. It is meant as humor, but it underlines the point that Trump's vision of law and order is both ridiculous and scary at the same time. Now let's move to the next takeaway. Takeaway 2. Trump using raids to scare enemies. After the laughs about Jones, Tim and Tommy shift into serious ground by looking at the FBI raid on John Bolton's house. Bolton was Trump's national security advisor and later a critic. His book was already cleared years ago, but the Trump team still ordered a raid, claiming he had old notes that might be classified. Tommy points out that in normal times, lawyers would just call each other and sort this out, but Trump chose a raid because it is intimidating. Tim adds that this feels less like protecting security and more like punishing critics. The raid, they argue, is not about safety, but about showing that Trump can use the FBI as a weapon. For example, Bolton is not exactly hosting wild parties where spies can walk in, unlike Trump, who had classified files at Mar-a-Lago sitting in a ballroom next to the guests. Yet it was Bolton who got a dawn raid years after the issue was supposedly closed. Now let's move to the next takeaway. Takeaway 3. Fear of an enemy's list is real. Tommy Vietor tells Tim Miller that Trump allies such as Kash Patel openly keep lists of people they want punished. These enemies lists are not just for big names like John Brennan, but also for mid-level staffers in the intelligence and defense communities. Tommy explains that some people are already losing jobs or having their clearances stripped just because they spoke out against Trump. Tim says this is how authoritarian leaders usually operate. They do not need to punish everyone, they just need to target a few and spread fear. That fear then silences the rest. For example, Tulsi Gabbard recently helped push to strip dozens of people of security clearances, even though some had not held clearances in years. The act was pointless for security, but powerful as intimidation. Now let's move to the next takeaway. Takeaway 4. Military on streets feels like martial law. The conversation moves to Trump ordering National Guard troops into Washington, D.C. Tommy finds it chilling to see soldiers walking around the Capitol with guns, even though they are not trained as police officers. Tim explains that governors from red states were eager to send their Guard units because they wanted to prove their loyalty to Trump. The pretext for this deployment was small street scuffles, nothing that required troops. Both Tim and Tommy worry this is preparing people to accept martial law. For example, Gavin Newsom, as California governor, once complained that his Guard troops were taken away from wildfire duty just so they could sit around Washington protecting empty federal buildings. This shows how Trump uses the military not for real emergencies, but for political theater. Now let's move to the next takeaway. Takeaway 5. Deportation camps in data centers define Trump era. Tim and Tommy then talk about the Everglades detention site in Florida, which critics nicknamed Alligator Alcatraz. It was built without electricity, with water trucked in and sewage trucked out, making it unfit for humans. A federal judge ordered parts of it dismantled. Tommy says this is what America's building in the Trump era, massive deportation camps and energy-draining data centers instead of schools or hospitals. Tim adds that Republicans even turn these camps into symbols by selling merchandise. For example, at a Matt Gaetz rally in Florida, Tim saw children wearing hats that joked about alligators eating migrants. The cruelty was being sold as fun. We're halfway through the video. Thanks for sticking with us. If you're enjoying it, hit the thumbs up and share it in your WhatsApp groups. If you'd like to support us, please tap the thanks button below. It helps us keep making great content. Drop a comment and don't forget to hit subscribe for more. Now let's continue with the video. Takeaway 6. Culture wars reach absurd levels. After the heavy talk about camps, they lighten the mood by mocking the absurd side of culture wars. Tim reads a tweet from Congressman Byron Donalds, who said he gave his life to Christ in a Cracker Barrel parking lot. Tommy jokes about whether that meant a religious conversion or something else entirely. They also laugh at Dean Cain, the former Superman actor, who tried to reinvent himself as a tough ICE agent, but never actually played professional football as he claimed. The humor shows how many of the figures now shaping conservative politics are not serious leaders, but people acting out fantasies. For example, right-wing media personalities like Benny Johnson openly cheer for migrant cruelty as if it were entertainment, proving how culture war antics replace real debate. Now let's move to the next takeaway. Takeaway 7. Democrats desperate for fighters. The conversation then shifts to Democratic politics, focusing on Gavin Newsom. Tim says Democrats have been hungry for someone willing to throw punches, and Newsom has filled that role by trolling Fox News hosts and MAGA influencers on social media. Tommy argues that this strategy is working because Democrats want to see energy, not just calm speeches. Tim admits he enjoys seeing MAGA figures mocked, but worries that if Newsom becomes the only fighter, he might lock himself in as the next nominee before anyone else gets a chance. For example, Newsom has been appearing regularly on progressive YouTube shows such as Midas Touch, which builds him a loyal online base, just as Trump once did with right-wing outlets. Now let's move to the next takeaway. Takeaway 8. Democrats need outsider energy. Tommy Vietor explains that Barack Obama won in 2008 partly because he felt like an outsider running against Washington. Since then, Democrats have mostly defended institutions rather than challenging them, which makes them sound stale. Tim adds that voters are looking for leaders who feel authentic and relatable, not just another cautious politician. They both agree Democrats need figures who can speak like outsiders, while still offering real policies. For example, a candidate in Maine launched his campaign by filming on his oyster boat while talking about jobs and family economics, which made him seem like a genuine person rather than another scripted insider. Now let's move to the next takeaway. Takeaway 9. Gaza war shifts Democratic thinking. Tim and Tommy then talk about the ongoing war in Gaza. Tommy says famine has now been confirmed there, with children starving while the Israeli government continues bombings. He explains that Israel under Netanyahu is run by extremists who are openly racist and violent. Yet Democrats often still use old talking points from the 1980s about Israel being a shining democracy. Tim agrees that groups like AIPAC police speech too harshly, which stops honest debate. For example, Tommy says the Anti-Defamation League's Jonathan Greenblatt once called him anti-Semitic simply because he criticized Netanyahu for dragging Trump toward war with Iran. They argue that if Democrats want to be credible, they must face the reality of what is happening on the ground in Gaza and the West Bank. Now let's move to the last takeaway. Takeaway 10, staying angry without burning out. The conversation closes with Tim admitting he sometimes feels numb from the nonstop Trump news. He says the endless scandals make it hard to care, even though the policies are cruel. Tommy says he feels the same way and warns that exhaustion is Trump's strategy. The more tired people feel, the less they resist. They both say it is fine to take breaks from reading news, but not to give up caring about real issues. For example, Tommy talks about climate change and how he worries about what kind of planet his 2 young children will inherit. He admits it is depressing, but says he refuses to stop fighting. Tim agrees that while some days it feels easier to tune out, the passion must stay alive for things like deportation, cruelty, starving children in Gaza, and Trump's authoritarian grabs at power. Here is a brief introduction about Tommy Vietor. Tommy Vietor is a former spokesperson for President Obama's National Security Council and co-host of the popular podcasts Pod Save America and Pod Save the World. He brings insider knowledge of politics and foreign policy combined with a relaxed conversational style. Thank you for watching. If you'd like to support this channel, hit the thanks button below. It really helps us keep going. If you enjoyed this summary, please leave a like and share it in your WhatsApp groups. To join discussion about this video, drop a comment below. And for more videos like this, hit the subscribe button below.